Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Project FITFO podcast. You know, where we sit here and we talk everything from business and personal, and we figure it the F out together. So today, cut the music, please, Mr. DJ. Thank you, sir. Today, we've got a great friend of mine, Mr. Glenn Cochrane, nurse anesthesiologist, CEO and owner of Infinity Functional Performance. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome, Mr. Glenn Cochrane.
Yeah.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much for
How
having
you
me
doing,
on.
sir? Appreciate you
Long
being
time
here.
no see.
Hey, all right. Long time no see, right? All right. So, Glenn, thank you for being here. If you could do me a favor and let the audience know who you are, where you come from, what business you have, also how old you are.
Yeah.
We're going to get personal.
Super old. I'm super old.
All right. So, sir, you
Yeah.
got the floor.
All right. So, originally from California, got board in Sacramento, May Thoroughfare Base, and basically spent most of my life there. And started out in emergency medicine as a paramedic and firefighter, and worked my way up through a medical field, flew on helicopters, and ended up going back to school to do anesthesia. And continued on, got degrees in pharmacology and functional medicine and toxicology, and just got in human performance. Moved out here to Texas in 2015 and worked on my anesthesia practice. Started a functional pain management clinic where we did opioid-free pain management, functional medicine, and then evolved into human performance.
Wow. That is a resume, my friend.
Yeah, that's the Cliff Notes.
I'm sure you could get deeper.
Yeah,
Say a lot of words a lot of people probably don't even understand, right?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So,
Well, I think it's very interesting because you actually run your facility, or your business out of Self-Made Training Facility here in Dallas.
yeah,
And is this your first time being inside of a gym, or do you have?
it is.
It is.
It is.
And how's that experience been so far?
It's been great. It's been like a dream. So, opened my pain management clinics. We're all based at chiropractic offices. I still have one in a chiropractic office. And basically, as we evolved as a practice, and just because of what I'm interested in and good at, sort of moved more and more to human performance, basically.
Okay.
And so working with getting people to optimize their perfect selves.
Now, when you say human performance, let's go a little
That's
deep.
pretty broad,
We got
exactly.
time. We got
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
So
Mhm.
you say human performance in what capacity? So what are you administering, prescribing? What is it entirely that you do in this capacity?
Yeah, so I think the word human performance is thrown around a little bit more. It's come in the last couple of years, come a little bit more in vogue. I started to hear like Huberman talk about it, and a couple of these other people. But basically, the idea has always been to be able to help people optimize themselves from every aspect of life. And so basically how they live, the foods they eat, the things that they expose themselves to, their environment, diet, exercise, mindfulness, optimizing every aspect of that and putting it together. And so the idea originally was to have people come into my pain management practice and treat them a little bit different. And instead of just isolating individual pain problems, sort of looking at the whole person. And so instead of having areas of inflammation that are isolated, just treat the whole person in systemic issues. And basically, if you fix that, then it's a little easier to fix the isolated issues. And then once they sort of evolve out of that, and then graduate them into living their best life. And so eating better, being able to exercise, be optimal weight, and basically diving really deep into not just the fundamentals of like we think dieting, but like what kind of diet.
Yeah.
How is our body actually breaking down our micronutrients? How effective is our stomach actually working in our gut? Some of the things that are blanketed across a variety of things like, hey, this diet's like the best. Well, understanding that patients' our clients, their genetics come into play, their gut health comes into play, their lifestyle, fits into this, and not every person is the same. You can't be like, hey, one diet fits all, one supplement fits all, but tailor making these things to everybody.
And it's funny because there's a lot of, and if I can get you just move a little bit closer to the mic, please, thank you. But as we get more into the personal training aspect and like that world, right? You get a lot of trainers, they don't really quite understand the nutrition portion that deals with the gut health and genetics and things like that. So you obviously assist them with, learning about that, but then also administering for their clients as well, correct?
Correct. Yeah. And on the flip side, what I believe makes us a little different is there's not a lot of medical practices that actually understand and value the importance of what a trainer can actually do in their life.
Oh yeah.
And I seen that early on, actually, because I hurt myself when I was pretty young, like in my early 20s, hurt my back pretty bad. And, I went to chiropractor, went to pain doc, went to spine doc, went to do all the things, physical therapy. And the person that actually helped me the most had a degree in exercise physiology and was working as a trainer in a gym and taught me about movement and a lot of those type of things and how not to be scared and talk. He was very knowledgeable in fascial plane and myofascial, movement and in the role that plays in pain. And literally that's what actually got me going. That's what like fixed me above and beyond all those other things.
Is that the piece that made you want to go this route in this profession?
One of the many, yeah. So that was, I've always been an athlete growing up. Baseball. I tried to play football, wasn't big enough. I wrestled and did martial arts for a number of years, and was always really interested in powerlifting and things like that. And as I've met more people and had more friends and got introduced to other, some of these different disciplines, I began to appreciate those other things. I had a friend who was a paramedic, and she was actually a natural bodybuilder. And I talked to her a little bit about the dieting, and she introduced me to a very well-known natural bodybuilder who helped me with dieting and understand, like, hey, that's actually how you become lean. I always thought I knew, like macros and figuring that out. But it's like I could never get that layer of fat off, and constantly under eating and just, all the things I just didn't know what I didn't know. And then until I finally was able to turn it over to like, hey, I'm not an expert in this area. And then trusted that process and had somebody actually doing the programming for me. And then so I had like all these different little pieces, you got personal trainer, then you got like pro bodybuilder and people doing, diets and a lot of the outside of the box thinking, so this, it's actually Alberto Nunez. He's part of 3DMJ. He's pretty, he didn't have any like formal education, but he was smarter than any dietitian, any kind of nutritionist, it's just crazy. And I've always been interested in that outside of the box, unconventional, like, hey, not playing by the rules. And, there's so many, I have multiple degrees and it's just like, it's paper, it's like you learn what you learn after above and beyond.
Yeah.
I hate when people are like, hey, this is what I was trained on 15 years ago. If you haven't learned beyond that, it's just craziness. And
it needs to be an evolution of education.
And people that find interest, if they're capable of learning, they could actually become pretty impressive in their field based on that. And
would you say that that's made you more successful because of the evolution of your education? It's made you, because some people don't agree, right, out there that, I have to, I hear all the sourness about like having to do continuing education. It's like, well, no, I'm not going to do all that. I'm good right where I'm at, right? I got the bare basics. It works. Yeah.
I can't stand that. Yeah, I really can't stand that, to be honest. And it's not like I'd like to be like a black sheep. Like, it's not trying to be different just for the sake of being different, but for the sake of being different, but being able to progress the field and to be better and bring new information. And, like my anesthesia training, I went through training to do anesthesia, but I don't practice anesthesia anything at all like I was trained, like not even remotely close. It's a completely different thing. I wouldn't be able to, like, I'd flunk. But what I do is completely different, and I've taught all over the United States on how to deliver opioid-free anesthesia and do regional anesthesia and use ultrasound and pulmonary care and these different topics. And I surround myself with those people that push and are innovative in that area, and I like that and I enjoy that. And I try and do the same thing in my practice here.
So so let's date it back. Okay, so let's roll back a little bit. Let's go back to high school. Okay, so in high school, tell me Glenn Cochrane. What was your, I know you were in baseball,
Mm-hmm.
you were doing martial arts. Tell me about Glenn Cochrane in comparison back then to who you are now. What were you thinking back then that your life was going to be before business, before all this stuff?
Yeah, so I mean, even just a step further, just in my elementary education up through like junior high, I probably was not an aggressive, not an assertive. I was very passive. I was very emotional. I had friends sticking up for me. I didn't have that confidence. I didn't have a lot of things. And I wasn't like super good at anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I wasn't like, I'd never made straight A's in my entire life, actually, ever, you know. But I loved to read. I loved to learn and try and develop like certain things. And I started wrestling, and that just like bring a whole like level of confidence to me. And then, in baseball, it wasn't just like about baseball skill. Like I knew I needed more. So I started reading like books on like sports psychology and visualization. And when like, I was just like, wow, this is crazy. You can add, hitting different areas of specialty from different areas is a lot more rounded. Some people can go off just natural in one area, but that really started getting me think outside of the box a little bit more. And then, so sports was like a big thing, but I sort of got fed up with the politics a little bit and started getting real interested in the medical field. I had some firefighters come and my school and a presentation. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. It wasn't like going to be a dream. I mean, I wanted to be an architect a little before that, but I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, And then as time went on a little bit, I was very involved in cars and different things like that. My best friend, he ended up dying in an accident when I was between my junior and senior year. I'd just taken CPR and I just did some basic firefighting classes, and life flight came, and with the flight nurses, it was just like incredible, and it was pretty traumatic for me. I mean, that was like the onset of like what we think like PTSD and all those things, but it just kind of put me in this like almost unhealthy desire to like learn and be the best and just like learn, take every class known to man,
So your best friend's passing
Mm-hmm.
really sparked
100%.
the whole thing of you like figuring it out, right?
Absolutely figuring it out.
And then like seeing where you were going to go in your future. Because you dabbled a few times, like maybe in other things, CPR, AD, those types of things. But then like with that unfortunate incident, it was like, okay, now I want to learn. And then like you said, you wanted to be the best.
Yeah, and when I seen that, and I seen them come and then try to take care of him, and he eventually passed a few days later of a brain injury. But for me, like at that time, like they were like the best of the best. They were just like amazing to me. I still remember the names of the nurses, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
That is absolutely amazing. So
I remember, and that's 30 years ago. It's over 30 years ago. I remember the names. Yeah.
Because of that traumatic incident, it really sparked your career and your future.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unfortunate, and I apologize for, your friend passing, but the fact that literally just like lit the whole spark for your whole future. And I mean, you're a very accomplished man right now. You've done a lot. So let's go to now you're a firefighter, right?
Yeah.
Let's skip to that. And you're a firefighter.
Well, so I did that as the progression.
Uh-huh.
It was a bigger plan. And that's when I figured out everything was like a bigger plan. I was like, well, how do you be the best flight nurse ever? Like that was kind of like my thing. Like, how do you now become the best flight nurse? Well,
you said flight nurse.
Flight nurse.
Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, so it's like when people say, hey, life flight comes, the rescue helicopter, somebody gets in a vehicle accident, the flight team, lands on scene. Many of the helicopters have two nurses. Some of them have a paramedic and a nurse.
Okay.
But I did my research and I was like, well, what makes like the pinnacle of like the ultimate badass fucking flight nurse?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
the cream of the crop.
Yeah. And so the best of the best that based on my research, is they had pre-hospital experience, which is before, like not in the hospital, but extensive in-hospital experience, but specific type. And so the pre-hospital experience, you had to be a paramedic and be well-rounded. Also, like knowing the firefighter side of it was also very important. So if you wanted to like know the pre-hospital stuff the best, you'd be a firefighter and a paramedic. Then you understand everything, like the vehicle accidents, the trauma, how to act on the freeway when, you know, there's car passing by and there's people dying on the side of the road, and be able to operate in those circumstances, calm, cool, collected, with authority, and understand that. And so that's the strength that a paramedic has. And then the nurses have that. They don't have that experience necessarily because they're Memorial Hospital. So you put in a nurse that's never been on the freeway, they, like, what's going on?
That's
Yeah,
true.
so you want that. But then the hospital aspect of things, that level of education and that experience is a little different. So the best ones that I've seen, they had intensive care, but also they had pediatric intensive care experience. So they're good at kids. And so my first, so I, firefighter, paramedic, went directly, became a nurse. And then I pursued, the first job I took was as an intensive care, pediatric intensive care nurse.
Oh, wow.
And I quickly figured out that if you were good at taking care of kids, you could take care of anybody.
True.
Because, I mean, you got really good kids are breathing, airway, just a lot, but they compensate fast, but they deteriorate quickly. And it's a whole different world. So yeah, so I went, got my pediatric experience. So I got my paramedic, and I got my RN early on. Then I got all my board certifications. And so I was like quadruple board certified. And then I just sort of built this little thing. And then I had a very young age. So I was like the youngest paramedic in the state of California at 19.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was dealing with MCIs and, people thrown out of vans and 15 people on the freeway, like when I was 20 years old. And then, and then I was a nurse by the time I was 22.
Did that have any effect on you? Like, and you can not answer, you can't answer. And I speak from experience here. So let me, not to overshadow you, because your experience is way further than mine. But some of the same experience, helping people that in traumatic situations, trying to revive people. I wasn't a firefighter, but even in the military and even in the civilian side of the world, I've had a few people die on me, few people, car accidents where I was the first one on the scene, that type of stuff. Actually, when I was going to retire from the military, firefighter was on the list. And it was like, what am I going to do next? It's like, well, I'm still young. I'm still like, I can still jump over stuff and I can still, I'm good. Go be a firefighter. And my wife was like, no. And the reason why was because I already had PTSD from the things that I have seen in the military. Now going into that world, it was definitely something that I don't think I would have been ready for, to be honest. So I much respect to you. One of the biggest things that I was really nervous and scared about going to be a firefighter wasn't the physical stuff. It wasn't any of that. Like, that was stuff I would found like enjoyable. The fire itself, I found like that was cool. Like I would attack a fire in a minute. Like, let's go to the house. Let's go, do all that stuff, holding the hose. And I got to do some firefighter training out in Oceanside, California, which is pretty fun. But it's the kid part. Like, that's probably one of the things I honestly know I wouldn't be able to handle.
Yeah.
So much respect to you to be able to do that, to be a nurse in that capacity, an RN, a paramedic, and all that, and then dealing with the pediatric side. I mean, man, how did you figure it out? How were you able to get through it?
Yeah. So to be honest, it probably was not a healthy thing. So, I mean, I probably had some trauma from earlier on, even than that. And so it took a little bit at that point in time for me to get going. And then honestly, I didn't go into the career for excitement.
Yeah.
Which is great, because a lot of people do. They go into it for excitement. There's nothing wrong with that. To be excited about a job that you're helping people. But for me, it wasn't like, oh, great, I got this exciting call to go on, And I was always just very calm. And I just remember going to really bad accidents and just always being cool, just chill. And I always had this saying, people, in order to speed up, you have to slow down. And so I had this thing, I just wanted to be efficient at what I did. I wanted my scene times to be short. I wanted to be quick, efficient. Wanted everybody to be in command. And I understood that if I was losing control on scene, everyone else losing control on scene. So if you show up and you feel good, and you're the one on authority, and you're not losing your shit, then nobody else is as prone to lose their shit. But if you show up and you're throwing, you're a tornado, then everybody else kind of falls apart. So I kind of did that in a respect where
It's so funny because I think that was a gem, by the way. We call those gems right here. And the gem was, in order for you to speed up, you must slow down. I hope you guys got that one, because that's a gem. That is one that you guys need to write down, because in business and in entrepreneurship, you see a lot of people, they try to go too fast, they crumble. A lot of people who, in the face of some chaos, organized chaos, right? They get flustered. And then, especially if you're a leader, then you're flustered. Then, like, as you said, everybody else is not going to be flustered. So it causes more havoc than it does anything good, right? So, yeah, absolutely. So now that you did all those things, you went into the world of entrepreneurship, or
yeah.
okay, so you're like, let's level up one more time.
Yeah,
With
yeah.
all the accolades you got, now I want to build a business around it. So how did you get into that?
Yeah, so my first little venture with trying to start a business on my own is I actually was really interested in finance.
Mm.
And so I went and got a degree in business and got really interested in financial planning. I felt like I was really good at budgeting. You'd never guess it now. But, I joke, but I'll tell you, I've made a lot of business mistakes. Just because you get an education in business does not mean you're good at it.
Amen, brother. Amen.
Yeah, for sure. And so, I kind of went and got an education in financial planning, and almost took a detour out of the medical field because I was experiencing a little burnout at the same time. And I think part of it is because I experienced so much so early. Like, I accomplished so much so early. And then I reached what I thought my goal, like my pinnacle. And then for me, I didn't enjoy the journey. And once I got there, then I was like, okay, I'm here. And I was like 25, 26. You know what I'm saying? When it takes some people like 20 years to get where I got there like in 6, And so I sort of went on this little road, and I kind of started a business of Cochrane Financial Management, and had this big vision, and they kind of really got me excited, and decided pretty quickly I didn't like selling type products, financial type product. I didn't like selling people on things, and I just wasn't really prepared to do that where I was in my life. And so that kind of went up, and then I sort of, gracefully failed and backed out, and then that's when I went back into anesthesia. But then when I went back to get my education in anesthesia, I knew that I still had a bigger picture, because I still had all these other little pieces. I had my personal training aspect, I had the pain aspect of things, I had to, understand the bodybuilding, the powerlifting, and I started being introduced into functional medicine, and I was just like, hey, I want this whole complete picture, and this is what I want it to look like. And I'm a big daydreamer. I love dreaming, love thinking about all the things you could do. And it slowly evolved out into that, and got my training in anesthesia and moved out, continued to get my other training. And then the opportunity presented to me to open a clinic, but I wasn't really prepared. But the opportunity was there.
Now, when you talk about you wasn't really prepared,
I didn't have all the education or the know-how at the point in time
on how to run a business, operate a business.
How to run a business, or even the skills to run a full-blown business the way I wanted to. I didn't even have the education on like how to do all the parts. I had like an experience with like a part, but I was presented with an opportunity that I felt like was too good to pass up. I didn't properly vet it. I had some people that really weren't honest with me about the situation. I was naive to the business world, got caught up in what I believed was sort of a shortcut, which I now, the greatest distance between 2 points is a shortcut. And so there's another gem for you.
That's another gem. I like that one.
Yeah. And so, but once I kind of headed down that direction, I was just like, man, I can make a choice. Like, is it both feet in, 1 foot out, 1 foot in, trying to figure that out? And this is like in the middle of, COVID was starting up, and, I was having some massive difficulties in my personal life, and it was just a perfect storm. I didn't have the know-how, and I didn't have the resources, and I didn't have financial resources for that, and it didn't go well at all.
Would you say those are some of your lowest points?
Almost. It was a little bit later, but yeah, it was the beginning of probably about a 3-4 year low point.
Yeah. Because me and you have had a lot of conversations, so I kind of know from this point where it's starting to lead.
Yeah.
So, but that's the whole point of this podcast, is like, because everybody has problems.
Mm-hmm.
right? But people like you have figured it the F out.
Yeah.
And so now let's get past COVID. So COVID happens. We all know COVID just shut everything down. How much impact did COVID have on you?
A lot, you know.
Because I mean,
Probably,
the medical field was.
yeah,
Yeah.
it could have affected me even if I stayed in anesthesia, because a lot of my coworkers, you know, so it just so happened in that first year, I went full blown into my business. So I actually kind of stepped a little bit out of the anesthesia world for like a year and a half. But knowing that if I would have stayed in the position I was in, I probably wouldn't have done that well either, because they were shutting down a lot of elective surgeries and things like that. Like I probably would have had a job, but I was an independent contractor at that point in time as well. And so it's hard to say, you know.
Mhm.
And and yeah, I was just committed to what I believed in, you know, even though I didn't know what I didn't know for sure. But having the mentality that, you know, just I think embracing the mentality earlier on, like really early in my life. I read this book called Failing Forward by John Maxwell. It's my favorite book. I've read the book like 10 times, but really enjoying the embracing the fact like, hey, failure is not defining of you. It's like in another world, you know, here, like, you know, you either win or you learn, you know. So failure is kind of just embracing that. It's lesson learned. And so I really kind of developed that. So I didn't, you know, growing up, I beat myself up all the time about all my failures. That, like, I remember beating myself up so bad, it like literally hurt me inside.
How many people are out there right now that feel the same way?
Yeah.
Right?
Oh,
There's
for sure.
A lot of folks that they get a failure and they sit in it. They sit in that.
Sit in the mud, man.
Yeah.
Sit in the fucking mud.
But you went and educated yourself even more.
Yeah. And the experience of failing educated me even more, you know, and so, yeah, so moving forward out of that, you know, I think I learned a lot. I learned so much. I had no clue what I was going to learn about running a medical practice. I mean, it's not my traditional training, you know, I mean, it's not like I was trained as a primary care physician or, you know, somebody that, you know, or a chiropractor, somewhere who you learn how to run, how an office works. You know, I had to like kind of figure that out on my own, you know, and ask questions. And I had a lot of amazing people that like just poured into my life, you know, just for no reason other than just they cared or they, you know, appreciated, you know, my vision or this and that, you know. I mean, I'd never be where I'm at today if it wasn't for a lot of those people that sort of like believed and want to like educate me along the way. But I had to show the desire and the drive. And
so you open up.
So yeah, I opened up my first clinic, and then I opened actually 3 at once.
Oh.
Like literally a short period of time. It was like rapid fire. I opened one in like October, and then I opened another in like February, and another in March. And then I just sat on those for about 2 years. Yeah. And after like a year and a half, I closed one of them, and then I like focused more on another, but not so much on the other. And, you know, and a lot of that time I was actually, just because of like my personal life, everything, I was like treading water. Like I don't even know how I was like doing it, to be honest with you.
Personal
it was
life,
just moving. Oh yeah. Personal life was a disaster, a complete disaster, and wasn't sleeping. And, you know, but I had a lot to learn about every respect of it. Like, you know, just every aspect of it, you know. I didn't know at the time.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to like live. I'm not trying to get up and like make another day, you know. It's just like that whole thing. If you can't see through the forest, you know, and it's just like, you know, you can't see, you know, so, but can you see the step in front of you?
I would tell you that the year 2012 was probably the worst year of my life.
Okay.
Ever.
Yeah.
It's the year I got divorced and lost it all. Like at all. You know, I couldn't even afford a shower curtain. Eating off paper plates, and had one plastic fork and plastic spoon was my silverware at the house, at the apartment that I had. And so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And you can't see too far forward. Everything's blurry, and you don't really know what's going to happen next. But how did you get out of that? How did you get out of that flame? So, you know, going through all of that, how'd you get out of it? How'd you get it with all the personal stuff that was going on? You had, you know, that crumbling down, which I know how that feels, and then the businesses, were they starting to come down as well?
Yeah, sort of all over. So honestly, like a few things happened all at once for me. So I began to deteriorate personally, for sure. And so number one, it was just moving forward. no matter what. Like I used to have like a 10, 5, 10, 15, 30 year, 40-year vision. And it got down to the point where it's just like, is next week going to be here?
Wow.
How about just tomorrow? Like literally, it really just got down to like, is it tomorrow? And even to a point where it's just like, I'm not even sure tomorrow. Not sure if I even wanted that, which is crazy because I never thought that I'd even but it got like literally like that bad.
Real dark. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, real bad. And then all at the same time, I was able to reflect on myself and figure out, like, hey man, there's some flaws. Like, it's like, I'm not the only, I'm responsible for some of this.
Yeah.
It's not just everybody else. Not like I was always pointing fingers, but sometimes when you're drowning, like you're just not really sure and you just don't know when to take the time and how to put that forth. But really being able to sit down and take a look at myself and make some massive adjustments that were just heartbreaking, because it's like, whoa, I see who I am like in these other areas. And that's like not who I want to be.
Wow.
Like even a little bit. And like moving forward, it's just, I want to step away. So I've been married twice, and so I got divorced in 16, and the first time I got divorced again, just 2 years ago. And each one of those sort of gave me some steps like, hey, this is, things that I needed to be better. But the last one is like really was to the core, like, hey man, I'm just, that marriage and it needed to, as hard as it was, like it was, it exploited a lot of problems that I had within myself that I would have never got in the beginning. And I needed to fix those things in order to move forward with the rest of my life. And as painful as it was, I'm understanding that came for a reason.
Well, it's and it's, by the way, thank you for sharing all of this, because I think it's important for people to know. One of the things that I really made this podcast for was because I know that there's people who like to wallow in their sorrows. They like to, especially in business, when it comes to entrepreneurship, every day is an adventure. Every day is a challenge. There's not one day that goes by, whether it's a Sunday, whether it's, it doesn't matter. There's no holidays. It's every day is a challenge. So I commend you on, how you figured it the F out and you were able to come out of the flames as you did. Now that as we move forward, you got your businesses. Now, Infinity Functional Performance wasn't Infinity Functional Performance. It was actually something else.
Yeah, so it was Crystal. We had Crystal Anesthesia and Pain Specialists, and then I had Infinity Functional Performance that started a few years ago.
Okay.
But I wasn't really able to, that was more of a vision. And so I started it, but I didn't really do much with it. And then when I met you, the timing was just perfect because the other practice was starting to really, as I pulled everything together in this last year of my life, business, and I was really able to focus and have an attitude and a mentality of like, hey, really going back to the roots of like, hey, everything's going to be okay. Like everything's the way it's supposed to fucking be.
Yeah.
Whether I like it or not, if I don't get something, it's like, okay, well, there's a reason for that, and I may not have seen it at the time, but always like panicking out of it. But even in the darkest of times, like, hey, if something fucked up's happening, like looking at the grid and waiting for that to happen. So that practice really started to pick up. And then I met you and then had the opportunity to be able to, partner and put my idea into a gym.
Yeah.
And as it sort of started playing out and with the tools that I had to be able to, implement everything together, it's like, oh yeah, this is going to work.
Absolutely.
This is going to work. And then so we merged the two companies together in a sense to make it just Infinity Functional Performance. Because I was doing less and less pain management and the way that I was doing it. And I was just like, hey, I got to make a decision on how I'm really going to focus on one or the other. And I'm not really a pain management specialist, to be honest. Like I manage a lot of things, but really in the grand sense of things, I was managing human performance and everything on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just I need to focus on, instead of being good at 10 different things, let's focus it down a little bit. And even within my company, we do 1 million different things. Okay, so I don't know if it's going to go away from that, but really it's okay, I just need to focus it down one business and one goal, and then let's package this and let's make this easy to implement.
Or at least what your capability of focus is.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's another thing that I hear so much. You have different varying opinions on the amount of focus. So you get people that are like, oh, you should only focus on one business and that's it. Focus on that one, make it thrive. And then once it's thriving and it's running on its own, then you go and you get a second one or a third or whatever. And then you get people that is like, you know what? I have the mental capacity to do all types of different businesses all at the same shot.
Yeah.
Like I can make it work, right? And it seems as if like that's one of those things that it's based upon the individual, you know,
And what the businesses are.
and what the businesses are. And sometimes with these things, it actually, like you said, you got rid of all these other ones. But just because you have the one doesn't mean there's not a million things going on that, you know, you have to focus on. So it's still not just one little thing. It's like, no, there's a million things going on, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's what a lot of the viewers need to understand, the ones that are about entrepreneurship, that, you know what's best for you, right? So now that you're in the gym, you're in the training facility, you're actually expanding.
Yeah, we opened another one in at another self-made in Gilbert, Arizona,
Okay.
and the owners of that, Gilbert and Scottsdale, are amazing as well.
Yeah.
So that was a really good fit to
Shout out to
explore
Anthony
it.
and Damien over there.
Anthony
Gilbert
and Damien,
Scottsdale.
for fucking sure. Yeah, that's some tops. Go through that area, go to their gyms.
Those are my brothers right
Yes,
there, man.
yes, and that's close to your hometown too.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's pretty cool to see like self-made training facility right down the street from my parents' house and where I actually went to high school and everything like that. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and on top of that, it's great because that's our next, and then we have a vision for a few more, obviously. But man, just the relationship and the connection, like our relationship, just is like, oh, it's my brother, and then it's like Anthony and Damien. Anthony's like, it's like, oh man, so that he's also pretty. The one similarities.
I'm glad you brought that up, because
and we're all the
this is
same
something-
age too, which is
We are,
crazy.
yeah. I think and that speaks, and it's funny you brought that up too, because me and you have not always agreed on everything.
No.
We've had our disagreements. But the one thing I respect about you is that we can have our disagreements and then we always find a common ground. We found a middle line so we can grow in business, so we can both be successful. And I think that that's one of those things that a lot of people need to understand, that in business, not everybody agrees. But we're brothers, like legitimate. I mean, I know our skin complexion is a little off, but
Oh, really? Just wait till the summer.
Wait till you go to Mexico,
wait
right?
till this summer.
but at the end of the day, I mean, it's like it's funny that I see people that can't get along in business, that have varying opinions and views, but me and you, and we flow.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
And honestly, I wouldn't want to get along in everything. That isn't even ideal for me. That's not the way I look at things.
yeah.
Like enough, but yet I want to be able to challenge each other, and I want you to be able to come and say, "Hey, man," or I want to be able to come to you and be like, "Hey,"
Yeah.
because if we're not helping each other grow, then what the fuck?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's part of figuring it out too. Because the thing is that you got to have somebody there. I like to have, people around me that's willing to, number one, challenge me, respectfully, of course. And then number two is be able to tell me when I'm wrong and say, hey, man, you're not good right here. And then that's the way I can figure it out. So with Infinity Functional Performance, what's your I know you said you planned it for tomorrow. You dialed it back down to tomorrow, but let's go. What's your plan for 1 year, 5 year with your business? And where are you going to grow from that?
Yeah, so we actually have 5 locations that we have mapped out that we'd like to accomplish within the next 3 more. Like in 3 months, we're going to have 5 locations. And by next year, we want to add, we'd love to, if this goes well, we'd like to add 12 more. And the following year, 12 more. And so we'll focus on this, getting our protocol down, getting all the policies, everything just like completely dialed in, and understand how to have the best relationship possible with the trainers, to be viable with or without the gyms, and just make sure that we have a complete business model where everybody's winning.
I don't think everybody understands how important this piece of the pie is, So, being a trainer myself, a personal trainer myself at one point, also owning a training facility, you are a big piece of the pie. Somebody like myself who's 45 years old, I remember back in June, I did a blood test and my testosterone was down to 216, which is crazy. My testosterone was down to 216, and that's crazy. I could barely function, So I think there's a lot of men, and I say men because I'm just talking from my own experience. There's a lot of men out there that don't even know that they have low testosterone, and it stops them from functioning at their full capability. And I know there's a lot of women out there where a lot of hormonal issues that they don't even realize is stopping them from their full capability. Can you speak of how important Infinity Functional Performance is just for that aspect? Because I know you do a lot of things, but for that aspect alone.
Yeah, just the hormones in itself, which is, by the way, a small piece, but yeah, it's extremely important because, I mean, testosterone, growth hormone, are extremely important for recovery. There's a lot of mental health aspects that roll over into hormone replacement as well, where people they struggle with depression and anxiety and poor sleep and ADHD and some of these other things. And so it's not always mental illness. It's, or struggles. It's a lot to be hormonally related as well. And it's hard to burn calories if your thyroid's off, if your adrenals are off, if, testosterone's off, like a lot of those. And so, balancing all that is a pretty important piece of the puzzle, Only part of it, but it's a very important piece of the puzzle,
And it's amazing because we have this in our facility.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, this podcast goes all over the United States and all over the world, but at the end of the day, Infinity Functional Performance is going to be everywhere.
Yeah.
And, this is something that people definitely need to get involved with. So, Glenn, this has been great. Do you have any parting words, anything for, the audience, any advice you would give them, especially with all the background you have, any entrepreneur, young, small business owner, anybody who's getting into the field, what advice would you give them if you can look to the camera?
Yeah. So honestly, embracing your failures, I think is probably one of the best, and just understanding that when things are not going right, it may not be going right for a reason. And it may be because you're just stupid to begin with, making poor choices, but there might be a bigger picture there. And I think understanding that and just trying to embrace things as a learning experience, and that everybody that's successful for the most part, unless it's literally just handed to them, is going to go through a million different problems, like running a business. And it's just it's the hardest thing you can imagine. And we're a small percent of us do it. Otherwise everybody do it.
That's right.
Everybody do it.
It's funny, that phrase is cliche, but it is true. If everybody can do it, then it'd be easy, but it's not.
Yeah.
So great to have you, Mr. Glenn Cochrane, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you. So with that being said, please like, subscribe, share. This one's a gem. I got some great people on this podcast. So please tell everybody about it. Share this podcast. If you have any questions or information or need information, where can they reach you at, Glenn?
Yeah, ifp.life is our website.
Okay.
Just there.
Instagram?
Instagram, Facebook, YouTube.
Okay, Infinity Functional Performance.
InfinityFunctionalPerformance.com. But ifp.life, L-I-F-E. We'll just take it right there. It's pretty simple.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Glenn Cochrane, thank you very much for visiting the Project FITFO podcast. And remember, when all else fails, figure it the F out.
I'm a bigger problem when I click with Skrillex. Murder on my mind, it's time to pray to God. My revolver's not religious, the revolution.